Welcome to Reread, where I'm rereading through the Empire series now, and I'm going to review issues 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 15. Okay, and I'll retell my story from the first time I did this review, but this is the Biggs Darklighter story with a little sub-story plotted in there and something that doesn't even involve Biggs Darklighter. But the first two revolve around him joining the academy. He and Luke are friends. They kind of have a little adventure before he goes to join the academy. Like he goes to talk to or eats dinner with the Lars and everything. And it's kind of following how Biggs did during his training. Now, Biggs sells his T-16 Skyhopper to Luke Skywalker, which tells me, hold on, that Adventures in Beggar's Canyon, when Luke had the T-16, that was his T-16. He didn't borrow it from Biggs. So I'm going to move that story a little bit further up in the timeline here, because it obviously happened between issues 8 and 9. And so I'm going to move that around because I didn't realize that he'd sold Lucas T-16 Skyhopper. It's just like mentioned in one sentence. And I was like, ooh. And that's the purpose of these rereads, is to find little things like that and kind of go over my existing timeline with a fine-tooth comb here and explain to you why I'm making these changes as well, because for one-liners like that. Now, Biggs actually graduates with Hobbs in his class from Rogue Squadron. They don't become friends till later on. In fact, Biggs doesn't even know that he's with the Rebellion. They show the deleted scene of him and Luke on Tatooine that was filmed for A New Hope to kind of set up with Luke Skywalker. You can find that in the Blu-ray copy, the deleted scene I'm talking about. But they put it all together. They add some. Biggs goes to see his dad for a little while too. Somehow, Tarkin is at his graduation speech, and Tarkin indicates, he hints at a moon that will strike terror in people's hearts. Like he's already bragging about the Death Star before he even rolls out. And Hobbs basically pops his head and goes, oh yeah, it's called a Death Star. And I don't know how I feel about everyone. Not I say everyone, but then Biggs is going home telling his dad about the Empire has this thing called a Death Star. I don't like the sound of that. It's like big as a moon. It's a battle station, can take out entire planets. Wouldn't they want to keep that a little bit better secret? I don't know. I mean, like I said, the rebels, like Hobbs, would probably know. He already knew that Biggs had started his own rebel alliance. He was just trying to find, and this matches up with the deleted scene. Biggs made a few friends at the academy, and they're going to jump ship, and try to find the next rebel alliance and hook up with them. Because what had happened during his academy run or something, they came across a barge of children that they thought were rebel sympathizers. So someone blew up, made a killing shot that blew up the entire ship, and there were dead bodies of women and children flying everywhere, which Biggs was like, nope, this is not my empire. Because the commanding officer didn't come down on him. He congratulated them. Like, this is a win for the Emperor. The Emperor will be proud. And the Empire, it's a great day for the Empire. And Biggs like, nope, I'm done. I don't even know why. He kind of questions why he even joined. He wanted to be a pilot, and the Empire controls all the schools out there, which makes sense, though. But anyway, he gets out, and they break out. They steal. They're about to kill Hobbs, but then Hobbs does a flash grenade, escapes. They don't know he's with the Rebellion, and they get all in some TIE fighters, and they huddle. They fly away. They blast out. There's pure chaos going on the ship, and they make it out. And you're thinking, well, why didn't they turn on their turbo blasters and blast them? Well, because Biggs and his team basically short-circuited them all or sabotaged them, and so they got a clean getaway. But of course, they don't know where to go. They're looking for some asteroids because they hear there's a pirate base out there, but there's nothing there. So they're just kind of huddled together in space, just trying to survive. And that's basically where the series takes a break. Those are the first two issues there. After that, it skips to a series. I'm going to go ahead and talk about it, but 10 and 11 is talking about a background for a funeral that was going to happen. There's someone in these books, General Jan Dodonna announces to people that, oh, we've lost a great person. General Sewell has died. And for some reason, in the middle, while Biggs and his people are out in their TIE fighters trying to figure out what they're going to do next, to be continued, bum, 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 and it says, we'll see you in Empire 11. You're thinking, wait, what about, no, Empire 12. And you're thinking, wait, what happened to issues 10 and 11? Because that's what I said when I was reading. I was like, what do you mean, see you in 11? Don't they mean 10? I mean, or 12. We'll say, see you in issue 12. I was like, well, what about issues 10 and 11? 10 and 11 came out, and it was about this funeral. And it was so confusing when this first came out. I was like, who cares about this guy? Like, they just introduced him, that Jan Donati, a great man has died, and now I'm taking his place. I'm the new general now. Okay. And then we had to have a 2-part story. It wasn't bad. It was just a guy who was roughed up as a kid, but he learned to be sneaky, and then he got in theater, and then the Empire shut down his theater because he was talking bad about the Empire in his theater, and they killed his girlfriend, and Marsla, or whatever, so he yells out her name every time he kills a stormtrooper. And since he's a thespian, he's good for undercover, so he disguises himself as Imperial officer, fools stormtroopers, and basically just tricks them, uses guerrilla tactics to kill Imperial officers. And so he's got a lot of skill, and he helped break General Dodonna out, or kind of freed him when the Empire came to arrest him, and they came to have a mutual respect for one another, went on many missions, and it shows them using Y-wings during those missions too, not X-wings, because back then all they had was Y-wings, which I thought was really good too. So the story's not bad, but why do you want to put it in between the Biggs Darklighter? I mean, right in the middle of a to be continued. Make this one issues 7 and 8, or 8 and 9. Don't put it in right here. It didn't make any sense. But anyway, again, Biggs Darklighter picks back up in issue 12. And what's he doing? Well, they're running out of air. They're running out of supplies. So then they decide to go back to the ship. What? Because Biggs Darklighter's like, well, we'll go ahead and just blast in there, blast in, blast out. That's a stupid plan. And they even tell him that. This is a stupid plan, but they're like, but it's so crazy, we'll go with it. So they go there, and they find out that it's been taken over by the Rebel Alliance. See, when Hobbs was trying to tell him, look, when you guys left, I was trying to tell you, I'm with the Rebel Alliance. We were planning this. You guys sprung our plan a little bit too early, but when the chaos erupted, we and a few other unknown Rebel cells were uprising. I mean, man, I think this thing was called the Rand Eclipse. That thing was doomed from the very beginning. It seems like 50% of the crew were rebels. And already, and this is interesting because it made me think of Bill Dietz's book, already Hobbs' team has painted the Rebel insignia or put it on their flight jackets. They have them on the TIE fighters. Someone spent the time to paint those on TIE fighters. I understand why, so you can tell them apart from the enemy, but who does that? Who does that? Why can't we have a story of the guy who paints the Rebel insignia on everything? Is probably pissed off. He's, okay, I'll get more buckets of paint. You know, even though you're probably going to get destroyed in the next battle. Screw it. I'm the painter guy. I'm the guy who paints. Please don't tell me they just hand that off to a labor droid. That would just be too soul-crushing for me to find out. But anyway, Hobbs goes on a mission, several TIE Fighter missions. They go on all these TIE Fighter missions. And on one of them, one in particular they go on, they all eject from their TIE Fighters and basically leave their TIE Fighter on autopilot. And as they're ejecting, they're in these seats, and Hobbs gets clipped by an incoming TIE Fighter. Now, another guy gets beheaded. It's a risky move. They may get chopped up as the TIE Fighters blow through them. But Hobbs is already missing an arm. He's got a robotic arm, and he's got a robotic leg. If that was mentioned in Michael Stackpole's Rogue Squadron, I had no idea. I had no idea that he had so many robotic replacements. And like I said, if Stackpole talked about that, wow. That I totally forgot about that about Hobbs, that he had, mechanical replacement parts. I don't know how I could forget something that big unless it wasn't mentioned in anything else. But anyway, General Jan Dodonna ponders why the Empire uses such, the TIE Fighters aren't that good, but he said, well, X-Wings have a hyperdrive and they don't want deserters. It's probably why they get rid of the X-Wing. And he said also there's probably some bribes that happened, and people, the highest bidder got to make the machine and they want it to be TIE Fighter. But if you remember, a good thing the prequels did is they set up, and I can't remember which book it was, but it may have been James Luceno's book, now that I think about it. But young Palpatine, always loved speed. He always loved speed. He thought speed was more important than shielding and firepower and weapons and stuff, which explains why the TIE Fighters, which are just basically, they call them, what was it in Death Troopers? Coffins? No, I think they call it in the comic book coffins, or pilot coffins or whatever, because you're going to die in those things. They're not shielded at all. But they got fast maneuverability. And that's what the Emperor really loves. He loves something fast and quick and can sting you. It makes sense military-wise why you'd form up a TIE fighter. If you put heavy plating on it, it won't go as fast. It'll be slow like a TIE bomber, you know? I mean, there's Darth Vader's ship, but that's a unique one that has a hyperdrive and a little bit more thicker plating on it. Anyway, why am I trying to rationalize this with you? So while Hobbs is recovering from his severed leg, a virus infection on the planet, and the wound gets infected, I guess, even though they cured it the moment he got in. Just something in the air on Yavin 4 infected him, and you see these red pulsing veins. Well, then later on, Biggs is telling him all these things Rogue Squadron's doing, and it feels like it's been weeks for all these adventures that he keeps talking about. We did this, we did that, then we went to this planet, then we went to this sector of the galaxy, then we went, and Porkins is there, Wedge is there, it's Biggs, they're trying to, and Doc, they're getting the original group, you know, that you didn't hear that much about in A New Hope, and talking about all these awesome things they did. And I was like, okay, well, the deleted scene from Star Wars is deleted, so now we can say it could take place months before Luke Skywalker got off Tatooine. But later on in the book, they say, oh, Biggs hasn't seen him in days since Tatooine. Days? Like, I think it's 2 or 3 days. Did you not sleep at all for those 72 hours? Because that's a lot of adventures you were telling Hobbs you were having, and that he was missing out. And at this point, Hobbs is covered all up to his head and everything with the virus. It looks like he's going to die. Well, the next book takes place in 15. They don't even tell you we'll see in 15. In fact, that is why I stopped buying the Empire comic books, was because I was so frustrated that they never would finish the big Darklighter. And oddly enough, I stopped at issue 14, and then they continued the story. But I was like, man, this is so hodgepodge. I couldn't do it anymore. And I eventually bought all the trades from 15 up. But they finally ended, and it's actually a good thing too, because it incorporates everything leading up to episode 4. Again, timeline-wise, there's a bunch of other stories that take place before this, but I do enjoy this story. And, well, I guess you could argue this should take place later on the timeline too. I'll move it up in the timeline. But for me, as it gives more credit and more background to Biggs, so you feel a bit worse when he dies, you know. Even though the memorial little hologram, Hobbs is the only one there to thank Biggs for his service. I don't know where Luke is. Why is Hobbs there? Because they explain Biggs, when Luke Skywalker came to Yavin, you know, straight after running away from the Death Star and warning over the Death Star, why didn't Biggs talk to him then? You know, that was a big question. Like, why did Biggs wait till they were in the hangar bay? What was Biggs doing? Biggs was out in the jungle finding a cure for Hobbs. Hobbs is an original member of Rogue Squadron, but didn't everyone die on Rogue Squadron except for Wedge? Well, that's because Hobbs was injured during the Death Star run, so he sat on the sideline. So now that's how he became an original Rogue Squadron member. They explained that. I was like, oh, the pieces started fitting in place here. And when Biggs gets back, he hears Luke's voice. He's like, that's weird. That sounded like, nah, he couldn't be Luke. Or someone mentioned Romp Rats. Who was that? Oh, that's weird. But, you know, then later on, Biggs sees him in the hangar. They have their moment, which is in the deleted scene. And then it talks about Biggs, you know, Luke saving his life in the air. And he's so proud of Luke for becoming a better pilot. Maybe that practicing the old T-16 really helped him out. And then he goes to cover for Luke and, of course, dies. It's actually a pretty good story. And yet now I think I am going to move it up in the timeline, because this big story leads up to, according to them, days. All of Rogue Squadron's great adventures came in just 2 to 3 days, and they were all of a sudden legendary. So I think that was a bad call. They should have said this takes place months later. I mean, if you want to say that, then it can take place here. But because they said days, I guess I will have to move this up. Other than that, though, it is a good story. It's mainly focused around Biggs Darklighter and him working for the Rebellion in a comic book called Empire. See what I mean? just they had some identity crisis here with the comic book series. But I'll get into more of that next time.